What if all this focus on, wealth, fame, external stuff, what if that's not really the point?
Mm-hmm.
What if the truly good life, the one that really satisfies, is built differently from the inside out?
That's a huge question, isn't it?
It is. And today we're looking at Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics for some answers. His ideas on living well are, profound.
They really are. And it comes from this series of lectures, essentially. 10 books trying to map out how we can flourish.
Right, a guide to human conduct.
Wow.
And our aim here is kind of similar to what you see on channels like Mindful Moments on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they use AI to analyze books. And it really sparks that kind of critical thinking, that reflection. That's what we want to tap into today with Aristotle.
That's a great parallel, because Aristotle's ethics isn't just theory, it's a practical framework. He wants to understand how to actually live that fulfilling life.
Which he called eudaimonia.
Exactly, Eudaimonia. And it gets translated as happiness, but that's a bit thin, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like more.
It's much deeper. Thriving, realizing your potential, living fully, that's closer to the mark.
So not just like feeling cheerful for an afternoon. This is the big picture goal.
Precisely. He starts by saying, look, everything we do aims at some good. Cooking aims at a good meal, medicine at health.
Okay.
But surely there must be some ultimate good, something we want just for itself, not as a step to something else.
And that's eudaimonia.
That's his candidate, the complete self-sufficient end goal for a human life.
Okay, makes sense. But how do we get there? What's the path, according to Aristotle?
Well, this is where his famous function argument comes into play. It's quite logical, actually.
Go on.
He asks, what's the unique function of a human being? What sets us apart?
Our ability to think, reason.
Exactly, rational activity. So he figures the good for a human must involve doing that specific function well, excellently.
Living according to reason, guided by virtue.
You got it. Exercising our reason excellently, and that excellence is virtue.
And virtue, for him, it's not about being perfect, right? It's more about finding the right spot.
Yes, precisely. Balance is key. He famously described virtue as a mean, a middle ground, between two extremes, two vices.
One of too much, one of too little.
Correct. Think about courage. Too much courage, rashness, is a vice.
Recklessness, yeah.
And too little, cowardice, that's also a vice. The virtue, courage, lies somewhere in between, finding that appropriate response.
Like generosity you mentioned earlier, not wasteful, not stingy, but just right.
Exactly that pattern.
So how do we find that just right? Is it something we're born with?
Good question. Aristotle says no. We aren't naturally virtuous or vicious.
Hey.
We have the potential, but virtues are developed through habit. Ethos, habit, is where ethics comes from.
So practice makes virtuous.
Kind of, yeah. Like learning an instrument or a sport. You don't become a great musician just by reading about music. You practice.
You have to play the notes again and again.
Same with virtue. By repeatedly acting courageously, generously, justly, we build that quality into our character. It becomes second nature.
So it's not just instinct, it's conscious choice, repeated over time, engaging our reason in deciding how to act.
Absolutely. It involves deliberate choice, informed by reason, and he splits these virtues into two main types, both needed for eudaimonia.
Okay, what are they?
There are the moral virtues. These relate to our character and actions. Things like courage, temperance, generosity, justice, the ones we develop through habit.
Right.
And then there are the intellectual virtues. These concern our thinking, our reason itself.
Like?
Things like theoretical wisdom, Sophia, understanding fundamental truths, and, very importantly, practical wisdom, mimesis.
Practical wisdom. That sounds key for everyday life.
It absolutely is. We'll come back to that. But both moral character and excellent reasoning are vital parts of the flourishing life.
You mentioned justice there, and earlier you brought up friendship. How do those fit into this picture of individual flourishing? Seems kind of social.
Very much so. Aristotle was clear. Humans are zoon politikon, political or social animals. We live in communities.
We need each other.
We do. Justice, for him, is the virtue that orders our relationships within the community, ensuring fairness, what's due to each person. It's essential for a stable, good society where individuals can flourish.
Makes sense.
And friendship. He thought friendship was indispensable for a good life, especially the highest form, what he called friendship of virtue.
Not just friends you have fun with or useful contacts?
Those exist, he acknowledged them, but the best friendships are based on mutual respect for each other's good character. These friends help us be better people, They provide support and context for virtuous action.
That really resonates, having people who genuinely want the best for you and challenge you.
Exactly. And thinking about how these ideas connect and apply, it sort of reminds me again of platforms like Mindful Moments or even these discussions we have.
How so?
Well, they encourage you to take these sometimes ancient ideas and really think about them critically, see how they play out in your own experience, your own relationships. It's about connecting the dots.
Right. It's not just abstract philosophy, it's about how we live together. So living well isn't a solo project.
Definitely not. Our ethical development is deeply tied to our social world. And navigating that complex world effectively, that brings us back to phronesis.
Practical wisdom. Okay, tell me more about that.
Phronesis is the intellectual virtue that allows us to deliberate well about what's good and bad for us overall, and to figure out the right way to act in specific, concrete situations.
So it's knowing how to apply the moral virtues.
Precisely. It's the bridge between knowing that courage is good and knowing what the courageous action is right here, right now, in this particular messy situation. It requires experience, perception, understanding context.
So you need both the good character, moral virtue, and the good judgment, practical wisdom.
You need both. One without the other isn't enough for true virtue or for eudaimonia.
What about pleasure? Where does that fit in? We started by saying it's not just about happiness.
Right. Aristotle doesn't dismiss pleasure. He actually thinks pleasure naturally completes or accompanies virtuous activity when it's done well.
Ah, so it's like a positive side effect.
You could see it that way. When you're fully engaged in doing something excellently, something aligned with virtue, it tends to feel good. But the pleasure isn't the reason you do it. The goal is the virtuous activity itself, the living well. Pleasure is more like a sign that you're succeeding.
So chasing pleasure directly is missing the point. Focus on living virtuously, and pleasure often follows.
That's the idea. The aim is the flourishing that comes from a life lived in accordance with reason and virtue.
Okay, let's try and pull this together then. Aristotle's big idea. The ultimate goal is eudaimonia, genuine flourishing, living fully.
Yes, achieved through activity, specifically activity expressing virtue, guided by reason.
And virtue is that middle path, the mean between extremes like excess and deficiency.
Found through practice, through habit, making conscious choices. Courage, not recklessness or cowardice. That's the model.
We need both moral virtues shaping our character, like justice.
And intellectual virtues guiding our reason, like practical wisdom, phronesis.
And it's not just an individual thing. Justice and virtuous friendships show the crucial social dimension.
Absolutely. We flourish together, and phronesis helps us navigate those complex social realities virtuously.
And pleasure. Nice when it happens. A natural result of virtuous action, but not the end goal itself.
Exactly. The focus stays firmly on the quality of our activities and character.
So here's something to think about. If you started consciously trying to cultivate specific virtuous habits, like Aristotle suggests maybe focusing on patience or honesty or courage in small ways every day, how might that deliberate practice actually change your daily experience, maybe even your long-term sense of fulfillment?
It's a powerful question. It shifts the focus from external outcomes to internal development, doesn't it? Are you actively building the character you believe constitutes a good life?
If this exploration got you thinking, definitely subscribe so you don't miss our future conversations.
And maybe share this with someone else who enjoys thinking about these bigger questions about life.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put a link in the description if you want to delve deeper into Aristotle or related readings.
But most importantly, keep asking yourself that question. What does a truly good life look like for you? Keep thinking critically.